Okay, Friday, 3rd of April, 2026. So Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. The Stokesay Balance. Now, bit of context. Now, there's a certain someone that I know that has a bit of a nice house in a village elsewhere in another country, Eastern Europe. And I noticed that the land is disproportionately big, or bigger than the house itself, in terms of square footage. Okay, and I thought that surely is going to create some level of jealousy with regards to the local community, the locals, the farming attitude, the self-sustaining attitude insofar as that land is barren, not being used. And I thought, surely if it's not utilised in some fashion, like for example a party at Christmas or New Year's and a party at Midsummer's, or in general farming in this little local village in the middle of nowhere, it will create resentment in some fashion. Okay, it's like an avenue, a risk vector, so to speak. Now, okay, so I theorise that if they have a party, for example, and utilise it in some fashion in a visible way, then it dampens that threat. Anthropology, basically, is that wealth distribution to mitigate jealousy. And then I was at Trentham Gardens about a month or so ago, and I noticed that on one of the little pieces of paper of like a tour guide kind of thing, it said that this house was visited by royals and one of the king or something, a king of England or something, was jealous about it, jealous of the owner. And I thought, that's interesting. A king jealous? Because he would have more wealth, in theory. Well, in theory. You know, this is back in the ages of, hundreds of years ago, kind of thing. So I thought, that's interesting. That means that the Trentham Garden estate, back in its heyday, would have had just as much wealth as the monarchy, so to speak, in some fashion, but they would have had fewer risk vectors, fewer attack vectors, in a sense of jealousy, or subversion, or usurpers, things like that. Because you could say they're keeping a bit of a low profile, as far as you can keep a low profile with a good kilometre or so wide estate. But interesting. And then about a month or so ago as well, I was in Stokesay Castle, more of a fortified manor, which is interesting. And I realised that, hang on a minute, there's a very fascinating dynamic at play here with regards to anthropology and with regards to human relations, so to speak. It's this interesting vector, this interesting coaxis, but it's this interesting combination of wealth, visibility and flex and risk vectors and attack vectors. Because you could say as a general thesis that the more flexing you are with wealth visibly, publicly, like the house in that countryside, because it's visible, they can see all the land. But if you're keeping a low profile, then naturally, if you're flexible, but you're appeasing it, then it's okay, you're keeping that attack vector at bay. So we could say that's the Stokesay Balance, dubbed after the Stokesay Castle, near Shrewsbury in Shropshire. More of a fortified manor, but nonetheless. So we could say then, the Stokesay Balance, in one line, maximum status per unit of political threat. Oh, that's quite profound. Maximum status, so ego, per unit of political threat. Now, we could say political threat in any kind of threat, not just, in terms of revolution, or usurping, or undermining, or hostile takeover, things like that. But it's interesting, in a sense of, the more you flex your wealth, naturally, of course, in some fashion, it attracts unwanted attention. Usurpers. It attracts thieves, traitors. It attracts opportunists, you name it. That's interesting. So then you could say, right, the theory of mind with regards to jealousy and yet how to flex wealth. All these things I mentioned all combine together to demonstrate risk factors by having wealth or flexing wealth. Risks to political situations or placate the people by having events, parties, hire and buy a local as well. So you could say, if you want to flex that wealth, anthropologically speaking, you would have to placate people in some meaningful fashion. Use the land, have an event, hire local, buy local, locally produce whatever the heck, or hire locals in general. And you could say, yes, it's good for business, but in a very interesting Machiavellian way, it staves off political threat, in a sense of, when the revolution happens in some fashion, the revolutionists come marching in, but the locals fight back to say, yeah, he's the bourgeois, but he's okay. He's okay because I have good rapport with him, good karma, so to speak, good relations. So do I, so does he, so does they. So we like him, it's okay. He's one of us. That's powerful. That's very profound. Because otherwise, we could keep it all a secret and be tucked away in a cottage. Okay? Have all that, zeros in the bank account, but be tucked away. No little or minimal prestige and status, and yet you are secretly wealthy while keeping risk factors low. So you're just hiding in plain sight. And you could say that there's a range of possibilities. An interesting another thing to consider. So if you say, I have all this land, I want to be public with it, you have more range of possibilities, more amazing things could happen, like good relations, good rapport with locals and have parties and events, but at the same time, more negative things could happen. Hence, if you don't want to even bother playing that social game, so to speak, at an even deeper meta level, you could just say, right, well, I'm not going to bother, I'm just going to be tucked away, I'm just going to be tucked away in a nice cottage somewhere with my business and not really be involved with the world. And when things happen, in some fashion, political, social, economical upheaval in some fashion, you'll be overlooked, you'll be ignored because you're hiding in plain sight, so to speak. That's powerful. So it's status versus threat versus legitimacy versus exposure. So you could say bigger, flashier, rarer, more attention. Fair enough. Attention attracts petty crime, organised theft, entitled opportunists, political activists or resentment, a powerful word, or you must be up to something kind of gossip, which is what resentment really is, gossip. And straight up entropy costs, maintenance, staff and complexity. Fair enough, because then you could say really, those are the costs at a deeper level to embrace your ego and make it happen. I want a big mansion in the middle of nowhere, or a big mansion in the town centre. What's that song? If I were a rich man, I'd have a big strong house in the middle of the village. That's going to come at the cost of gossip and usurpers and whatever else. But it depends how embedded you are. Legibility, more local buying, hiring, fixing, showing up, more legitimacy. That results in more legitimacy. But also increases boundary pressure. Since you're so jealous, can't you? Dependency dynamics, being dragged into local politics, or even being blamed when you don't solve everything. Very possible. Again, you're dealing with humans, and humans can say and do all kinds of silly things here and there in their own way. So you could say, right, decide your target, your visibility tier. How visible do you want to be? That's really the fundamental question here. How visible do you want to be with status, with ego, with wealth? And of course, it's an endless question. Invisible, normal professional, low flex, least hassle. And that's very much the culture in the Netherlands as well, where it's a culture of being modest and tucked away. Quiet quantity, usually optimal. Everything high quality, but not flashy. People sense money but can't prove it. Okay. Tasteful prestige, obviously wealthy. Respect rises, so does targeting. Or 3 landmark, you become the rich guy with the place. Now you're a local institution. High risk, high obligation. Wow. Interesting. So then you could say, well, separate home security from status signalling. Okay, so then security, boring, laid, invisible. Status, subtle, culturally calibrated, and low provocation. Interesting. How embedded at a fundamental level do you want to be in the community, in the society? Again, as I said earlier, to be part of community in general, intrinsically, altruistically, out of your own desire, or out of sheer Machiavellianism. But that can be quite cynical. Okay, so build legitimacy without turning yourself into a public wallet. The rich guy that does everything, the rich guy that can solve everything. The local ATM. Spend local, employment, fix visible irritants, solving local issues, and show up. Attend events, be polite, be predictable. Now you could say, at a deeper level, isn't that kind of what government is? Where it is fix visible irritants and showing up. in the sense of doing what's necessary socially just to placate the masses so as to circumvent and prevent, nip it in the bud, revolution, early general elections, upheaval, riots, protests. Interesting. If you're going to be really technical and really Machiavellian, makes sense. Okay, so then you could say the cottage versus manor. Cottage, low targeting, high social integration, low upkeep, easy routines. And everything else beyond that is a nicer place. So, fascinating thing to say. And you could say the sweet spot, heuristics, and beyond. So then you could say, do you want to be a private person with local goodwill or a local landmark with responsibilities? That's powerful. Do you want to be visible? Or to what extent do you want to be visible? To what extent do you want to embrace and fan the flames of ego? That's fine, but then understand the social consequences that come with it and how it could affect you further down the line, socially. Resentment, gossip, you name it. Very important factors to consider in terms of life and business. Interesting. But nonetheless, powerful stuff. Stokesay Balance. But otherwise, Adrian's daily vlog, sharing smart stuff men should know. Subscribe for more, and you will see me tomorrow.